Hello everybody, this is Astocky here, and I am back with the Kerbal Space program Real Let's Play. So the first thing I thought I would do is just have a quick check at my satellites. So you can see they're still both acting like really good relay sats. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to send some satellites to the moon, and so that I can get three kind of satellites all around the moon, basically probably in fairly high lunar orbits, to make sure that any vehicle that decides to go to the moon is going to be in contact with the satellites that can link back to this one, that can link back to the Kerbal Space Center, which is just there. Now the other cool thing is that this particular satellite here, station, is still moving around, and we're actually going to go to that first and just check it out, because we want to see how everyone's still going on board. We'll just minimize some of this stuff down. Resources, how we doing? Still got plenty of oxygen on board. It's doing really well actually. The guys on board are doing their super fantastical researchy type stuff. Could probably even turn on our Kethane detector. Actually, I might even do that and just do one little orbit around. What's that on now? 10 times speed. Let's go for 50 times. And we will see if there's anywhere on the, I guess, the Kerbal equator that has a Kethane deposit. I'm kind of hopeful. Not expecting it, but hopeful. Wow, that really drains down the electric charge when they're in the shady side. That's less good than I was hoping for. Back in the sunny side. How we doing? Did we find anything? I'm not really expecting to find anything, but you know, it doesn't hurt to look. Whoa, look at that. We found a bunch of stuff. What's this? This is the kind of like on the desert, just to the left of the Kerbal Space Center. So you know, I might be able to fly a plane over there. Now I can't harvest any of the Kethane over there for money. That was one of the rules in my campaign, but I'm sure I could. Look at that, we've got a beautiful little triangle thing set up. Yeah, I think I could without too much difficulty actually. Yep, there we go. Yeah, I think I could without too much difficulty end up getting myself some kind of plane or something over there anyway. But let's hide the map and then deactivate the detector. We've done everything that this one can do. We'll call that some research actually. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Space Center and we're going to launch our next probe. Actually, the time to check the tracking anyway. So where were we? Yep, it is almost in line with me. And as we come around, we're going to have this one and this one, which means that's basically the perfect time to launch a satellite. Now, if everything goes well, I'm actually going to launch 2 satellites this particular mission. I'm going to call this one Relay Sat 2 as well, because this design just worked so well that I see no sense messing with it. One thing I am going to do though is I'm going to bind Action Group 10 to deploying that antenna, and then save that design, because there have been too many times when I've forgotten to deploy that antenna. Too many times. Okay, so once we have control, we will press 0. The little antenna sticks itself up in the air, and now we are going to throttle up. SAS on, let's take off. Now it's pretty much standard for pretty much all of my flights that I kick over to about 70 degrees and then try and hold it about the 70 degree mark. Now I know for those of you who are kind of new to watching this, I know that normally you would climb, you know, as vertical as possible to 10 kilometers before starting to kick over in your I guess your gravity turn, but that doesn't work that well with the FAR mod, because the FAR mod adds some realistic aerodynamics. the kind of speeds you get up to at 10 kilometers, it's just too thick of an atmosphere at that altitude to actually make it make any sense. Your probe, everything just starts to really kind of wobble, and you have to really fight wind resistance to try and get yourself to actually do it. Now the next thing I like to try and do, and it doesn't always work, but I like to try and keep things below about 300 meters per second while I climb until I hit about the 10 or 15 kilometer mark. And the reason for that is I find that you just get a little bit, I guess just a little bit more stability when you're not really pushing hard into the wind. Now we had what sounded like an explosion then, and I don't know what that possibly could have been, but it's not that important. There you go, we're up to about 15 now. So now I will tip it over and try and get it to hold itself at about the 45 degree mark. It won't always work. There we go. Try and hold it at the 45 degree mark, and you can see now we're accelerating quite quickly. I don't normally do it, but I'm going to now anyway because I'm kind of pitched over well enough. I'm going to really crank the throttle up because we want a really, really high orbit. I mean, we're looking for, you know, an orbit that's way out there. So what we want to try and do is get our apoapsis pretty much as high as we can. So I'm going to hold 45 degrees basically until this engine burns out. And that's going to mean that the engine is going to be up really high by the time it does burn out, and it's going to drop back in and burn up on its way back down as long as this periapsis is kind of in the atmosphere. And by burning all your fuel in a mostly upward trajectory, you can pretty much make sure that happens. So now we're going to cut throttle. The reason for that is decoupling is much more stable when you cut throttle like that. So now we're going to push the apoapsis up to about, probably around about 200 kilometers. You can see that piece of space debris is going to come back in. It's going to land. Looks like it's probably going to land on some landmass, but it's going to be getting up to, you know, well over 100 kilometers anyway, so it's going to burn up nicely. So again, getting this up to hopefully around about 200. You can see that it's being controlled now by the space station instead of being controlled by the Kerbal Space Center, which works just fine for me. And we cut thrust. There we go, 200 kilometers. So we've still got loads of, I guess, down burn left to do. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a maneuver node and use this to just roughly circularize the orbit. Making it a circle isn't that important. Just we want, there you go, roughly circular. And now I'm going to use the flight computer. It's not that important in this particular case, but it becomes really important later on when you might actually be out of contact with things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say turn the ship towards the maneuver node, and now the autopilot will hold the maneuver node. I'm now going to say burn for 814 meters per second of delta V, and I want it to burn at just well, what I'm going to do is actually set this up so that it's at 002. Set it to burn at 2 minutes. No, let's burn it for 2 minutes 30. Because it's a 58-second burn, we want to basically engage it right at the 3-minute mark, because that'll burn about half the burn on either side. And it's basically as soon as we click send, we're sending that autopilot command to the spaceship, and it will then fly itself. There we go, so we've now sent it. In 2 minutes 29, it's going to start its burn. Now we are still in control, so you can see we're still connected to this thing here. But in the event that we were not, it wouldn't matter because it's already sent the autopilot command to it. So what we'll do is we'll accelerate ourselves up a bit. We'll go about 10 seconds before it burns. There we go. 0 seconds. So now we're burning, watching the delta V countdown. I'm completely hands off the controls at the moment. It's doing everything by itself. Now, I don't think of this as being the same as Mech Jeb because I have to program absolutely everything in, and I have to do it at a time when I've actually got access to communicate back to the Kerbal Space Center. So I think those are really important things in terms of how well we actually do for setting these things up. Now the next thing I have to do is work out at which point it is, once we have this stabilized, that I want to actually engage the next burn. So I think I want to do it when it's about here, to kind of put it there, because then the planet and all these other things will turn and it should end up out in the right spot we want it to be in. So here we go, look at that, engines cut off beautifully. So using the maneuver node advanced setup, we can do that setup like that. So I definitely want it to be here. So I want to add a new maneuver node, and we'll use that maneuver node to boost ourselves until our apoapsis is 2868. So I'm just going to what just happened. Okay, 0 to bring it back up. 5. Let's see how that went. 2848. That'll be just perfect. So once again, actually let's go to vessel and just make sure the current stage we have has 1200 meters per second of delta V left, and this burn is going to need 575. So that's going to be just fine to get us up there. So once again, we'll set the flight computer. 100% throttle, we want to burn 575, and we want to burn it 15 seconds short. So 0, 11:45. Set it to maneuver again. So we're getting ready to get there. We will send it the command signal again. Now you can see that right now it is being perfectly controlled by this station right here, but what is going to happen eventually, because this station's moving faster than we are, is that station will eventually get ahead of us in the orbit, and that's when either Relay Sat 1D or Relay Sat 2 will become very important in terms of actually looking after ourselves. So we need to also rename this vessel. Now I'm not 100% sure how to do that, but it's very critical. As you can see, we're running out of our power, so it's very critical that I deploy those, because I have in the past ended up with stranded probes. Not in this particular play, but I have in the past, and it's rather embarrassing when that happens. Now for some reason, because we're on the dark side, we're not going to get any power until we get around a bit. So where's the sun is that way. So it's going to be, wow, it's going to be a while before we get any power. Let's just speed things up and see how we go. Yeah, look at that, we've got all the power we need now, because the sun has just risen. There we go. We're now burning, and we are setting ourselves up nice and high, and it's going to be pretty close to a third. It's going to be a bit closer to this one than this one, which means I burnt just a tad early. But I think we'll cope with that. I think this is going, actually this is going pretty well. We went a little bit high. Never mind. We will sort that out. In fact, I'm probably going to do this sorting out manually. Now I'm not 100% sure if this is what happens, but see how the stage light is locked? I think that means the autopilot still has control and hasn't given control back to me manually. So the way I fix that is I just jump back to the Space Center, and then I go back to it again, and then when it loads itself back up, the stage light should be unlocked, which should mean I have control again. Oh, well, I certainly have control, whether that's what it's meant to mean or not. So let's turn off the vessel stats. We'll just go to the orbital stats. And we want to run it until we're very close to our apoapsis. It says we've got 40 minutes left to go, so we're going to run that a bit faster. Oh wow, look at that. These things are going to basically catch me by the time I get there. Yeah, this is not quite how I wanted to do it. Anyhow, let's... Oh, we've got to turn prograde. Okay, so we need to start burning now. We need to burn our periapsis right up. Gonna keep watching that. .6, 2.7, 2.8. There we go. 2.867. That's got to be close enough. Now I'm not, again, 100% sure what's going to happen here, but because we're pretty high up, this thing should get in front of me. Now what I'm thinking of doing is when I get to that periapsis, I'm going to burn my apoapsis down and see if I can spread these things out a bit more. We've got 10 minutes until we get there, so let's turn ourselves basically retrograde and stop. One minute. Okay. Four, 3, 2, 1. Got heaps of delta V left, so now that should mean that because I'm inside this other one, I should end up like speeding forward in my orbit. Now it might take me a few orbits to actually do it, but yeah, you can see there I've already sped ahead quite a bit. I'm hoping that by the time I get back to this point out here, I'm going to be basically in the perfect orbit. And that's going to be pretty close. I mean, it's not going to be right on the money, but I think in terms of having 3 satellites up there, that's going to be pretty darn good. So now let's set ourselves. This time we want prograde. Stop. Stop. That's about as close as I can be bothered getting. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left to get there. 1 minute. Whoop. Okay. Now we've got a 12, 10, 9. It's got to get and try and burn that right up now. See, it's rising nicely. I'm just watching the counter over here. I'm going to get that 2868. We don't want it to happen too quickly, and we don't want this one here to shoot off too fast either. There we go. Beautiful. And that is pretty close to the ideal orbit of what I wanted to go for. Now we should be in a good position that anywhere you are near the moon, you can pretty much see one of these 3 satellites. And that's thumbs up, exactly what we wanted. So now that we've done that, let's not end the flight. Let's go to the Space Center. Ooh, actually, no, let's go back. We need to rename that. Now, I've never actually renamed a vessel before. I've seen somebody else do it though, and I think it was just as simple as like a right click. Rename vessel. So you are going to be RelaySat 3. So let's have a look at ourselves now. RelaySat 3. Back to the Space Center. Make sure the tracking station is picking up those 3 relays that we're supposed to be seeing. Yep. 1D, 2, and 3. Yeah, man, look at that. Like I knew what I was doing. I wish that was the case, but it definitely turned out the way I was hoping for. So now, next stop, the moon, or the mun, however you want to say it. Now, the design that I'm going to use for the next rocket, I'm actually not going to fly right now. I'm going to fly it at the start of the next mission, but I am going to build it now. And I would like to thank Legwanopole, I hope that's how you pronounce it. Basically, he contacted me on the Kerbal Space Program forums on the thread for this, which is in the description down below the video, and he said, I've got a pretty cool design that I think would really help you out. Do you want a copy of it? So I said, heck yeah. So he sent me a design for his launch vehicle that can, with one single vehicle, launch 3 probes. And that's exactly what I need, because to go to the moon, I don't want to have to send 3 separate ships and fly them the whole way. I just want to send one and then kind of change the orbits to help space them out. So he sent me his design, which was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, a little bit of an issue of my own, a little bit of issue of a couple of different things, but basically I couldn't fly his ship. I kept messing it up, and I ended up not quite having enough delta V and some other things, but I've blatantly plagiarized his design, and so what I'm going to do is basically build the design inspired by his design that he gave me, and I'm going to use that to basically be my probe launcher. So basically we have a giant battery bank that's much bigger than it needs to be, but I kind of like that. I think that's cool anyway. Now the next thing we're going to need are struts. Actually, these aren't struts, are they? These are, oh yeah, cubic octagonal struts. So I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit to make sure I get this correct, but we're going to put them, why are you not putting correctly? There we go. Now that basically, and why'd you only put one? You crazy thing. I want 2 of you. That basically sticks it out just far enough to act as the mounting point for my 2 ComSat dishes that I'm going to put on here. So I'm going to line this up, center it all up nicely, and there we have our 2 ComSats. There's a bit of texture overlap there, but the game doesn't pick that up as clipping, so I'm going to pretend that that's not clipping. Now we're going to need a Kerbal flight engineer, just the one of. So I have a nice spot just here on top that I want to mount that to. And of course, it's a spaceship that needs to fly, so it's going to need its own liquid fueled engine. Now there we have the basis of the spaceship. What it needs though is some deployable antennas. So we're going to go for 2 of those deployable antennas, and we are going to action group them to action group 10 again. Hopefully that should select both of them, it does, and say toggle. That's going to become very important for me later. So yep, there we go, we have those, and now like every good spaceship, it needs some solar panels. So we're going to pick these ones, put them just here below the antennas, and that is basically our probe. Now if we look at that probe, see it costs a little bit of money, not too bad, and it has about 391 meters per second of delta V. That's not a lot of delta V, but it is enough delta V to do some orbit shifting around the moon. In fact, that's actually enough from a Kerbal to the moon orbit to actually capture orbit around the moon. So that really is plenty of delta V. I could go for a little bit more and go for like the toroidal sort of things I had earlier, but an Astocky fuel tank only costs 80, and these toroidal ones cost 100 each, and I had 3 of them last time I think. So I mean that was, what's that, 10 liquid fuel versus 5 liquid fuel. I take that back altogether now. I'm going to go for just a single, where were you? Just a single toroidal tank, because that already gives me more fuel than I had previously, and it should also give me something nice for my struts to hang off of. So I went from 391 delta V to 600, so I basically doubled my delta V. That's a very cool design change, and I've already got the giant battery, so that kind of was, you know, not taking up any excess real estate. So what I need to do now is basically replicate this design, and the way I'm going to do that is, hopefully, fingers crossed, this will work for me. We're going to go for a probe size decoupler, then we're going to go hold down Alt, left click to duplicate that, and then duplicate it again. Now we should be able to just place our octo probe and then place that, and then once again place an octo probe and then place that, and there we have ourselves our 3 stack of probes. Going to need to move them way up because I don't know how high this needs to be. But now once again we have to do our same little setup where we mount 2 of them, and then 2 of them, and in fact I'm going to take that off and I'm going to mount just the one of them. I'm just going to stick it on the side there because I need to have it, but what I actually want to do is that going to fit? Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to mount on the very top of this one that large maximum altitude 1,000,000 kilometers, maximum altitude 300 kilometers. Actually, let's go for the smaller one because I think it's going to fit in a little bit better. Now only one of them needs to have that because they're all going to be in basically equatorial orbits, so having them in equatorial orbits is going to work just fine. Now the next thing that I'm going to need to do is add on the struts and the panels. So our super duper things like that, we'll add 2 more of them like this, and then our panel, our dishes. So we have our 3 probes with our 3, with each one with the dishes plus the other stuff that's necessary. We basically have our payload complete. Of course, this is likely to fall apart really quickly unless I put some struts in. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit because it'll make it easier. I'm going to go for 4 times symmetry and go from here and then attach them to the fuel tank and then do the same on each of the other ones. Now at this point we are going to do something that I hadn't done before and I hadn't actually thought of. And again, once Legwanopole pointed out to me, it makes so much sense to do it. I can't believe I didn't think to do it earlier. Basically, to make this payload into a good payload, we are going to put on a payload fairing. Now this is the payload fairing from, I believe it's the Payloader Pack, something like that. But you can see that it just works absolutely perfectly with these probes that I have. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to action groups. I'm going to go to my action group 10 again, and I'm going to make sure that all of my antennas deploy when I press 10. That's perfect. And now I'm going to go to my solar panels and make 9, toggle out all my panels. So once I'm out of the atmosphere, I can use those. But here we are very, very close. Look at that, we have one perfectly fully self-contained payload that weighs a total of 1.7 tons. So it's not even a very heavy payload. We've got a bit of delta V, not a huge amount. It's not very much at all, in fact. But you don't need very much delta V when you have little tiny probes. So there's our stacked decoupler, and basically what we want to have happen is we want to have these fairings pop off quite a bit earlier than where they're actually going to pop off. But we will deal with that later. For now anyway, we're going to call this Moon Probe Launcher. I'm going to save that, and I was going to say I'm also going to add it to my subassembly loader, but I'm probably not going to do that now. I should have done an individual probe and added it. But anyway, we'll deal with that later. Basically, that's the payload. The very start of the next episode, I'm going to build the rocket to launch this payload, and then hopefully we're going to launch some probes. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. Stay tuned for, it should be in the next 30 seconds or so, when I basically go back to the forum page and I do the update to show how much this particular mission that I just launched cost. So again, thanks for watching. Astocky out. Okay everyone, so here I am with the post-mission debrief. Very simple actually, because it's actually the same as mission 4, except just I had to tweak a couple of the figures because we started with 110,000, and there we have 110,000. We wanted to launch ComSat 3 into Kerbo-sync-ish orbit, so we built the ship. We got again the same as the mission number 3. We got the 50% bonus. So I guess the normal getting into orbit is 40k. We got 50% of that because it's a probe, and 50% of that, which is 10,000, because it's the second time, or in this case the third time it's actually been done. So we can still make a little bit of money, but it's not a particularly profitable venture. We then got 50k back for the ship, and we got 50k research bonus for the work that research satellite has been doing. In this particular mission, it was doing some research to do with the life support systems, but also some research to do with the Kethane scanner. And that research has paid off because, like I said, in the very next mission, which will be mission 6, we will be launching some probes to the moon, and one of them will be not just a comms probe, but it will include a Kethane scanner, and we're going to start scanning for deposits of Kethane on the moon. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the way this is going. If anyone is like Legwanopole and would like to post, I guess, a comment here, or would like to let me know that they have a particular vessel they'd like me to either use or base my design on, please feel free to post something in the comments or send me a PM on YouTube. Or even better, it would be better if we could, I guess, constructively make use of this forum here. There hasn't been a whole lot of posts going on the forum, but if anyone's interested, please post to the forum, because that's going to be the best place for me to check it and the best place to, give me links to videos and those kinds of things if you've got another video where you've got something you'd like to demo. So until next time, thank you very much for watching. Astocky out.